the creative force behind social good. And with just a few lines of introduction, 40 years of my working life, I've dealt with creative people who don't think they are any less than a writer or a poet or an artist or a sculptor, because essentially they are of the same breed. The joys of dealing with creative people, the frustrations of dealing with them, and many a time I've wondered, why are they so prima donna in their approach? And then you realize actually for a creative person, be it an artist or a writer or even an advertising creative director, till the minute they put that creation together, it didn't exist on the face of the earth. And that's how this fierce sense of attachment and pride with whatever they do, good, bad, or ugly, every creative person believes that till he created that piece, it didn't exist, and therefore they are very passionately wedded to that. I think a couple of sessions ago, we spoke about how companies are probably, and Muthuraman was making a fervent appeal to hope that companies change the way we look at doing good. And I'm happy that instead of putting their energies behind selling more televisions, more mobile phones, more toothpaste, more whatever, and I did that for many, many years. But some of the best memorable work that we carry to our grave will be work that may have helped society and community achieve some good. And some of you have seen the work we did for the Indian Army. But I want to focus on three case studies today of some what I thought was very lovely work by a creative person in a communications company, which has helped create some social good. And these are only examples of what everybody can do if they actually put their hearts to it and work towards creating that. And I think two things have helped in this whole journey that I've seen creative people take. One, and we spoke about this a couple of meetings back, where we said that increasingly companies want to be more responsible to the society, to the environment, and therefore possibly are pushing their communication partners to do things in that. The second is, I think, the entrance of the digital medium. And this I have personally seen because 20 years ago, if you had to do a socially good campaign, then the marketer or advertiser who had funds to support such an activity put something together, and then it would blast on television and maybe on a few print ads. And he just crossed his fingers and hoped it was effective. Over the last 15, 20 years, we have seen a number of such social good public work being multiplied 10 and 50 times through the co-creation of people at whom it is aimed. And that's largely due to the digital medium. So today, whatever you create, and we call it contagious ideas that change the conversation. So if you want to, for example, attack the problem of potholes, then with an innovative creative idea, you can sort of energize the community in that city or in that location to participate through social media, through the internet medium. And through the combined force of this participation, some of these ideas take on a larger role. And this has been the biggest contribution to the success of some of these campaigns. The first one I'm going to talk about, and in all these, you will notice that beyond the execution of a powerful idea, there is a very strong nucleus to all these programs. And that is something that watch out for in all the three cases that I will talk about. The first is actually an effort by a gentleman called David Droga. David Droga became international creative director of Saatchi & Saatchi before he was 30. He was so talented. And in about another 10 years, he had, of course, set up his own agency called Droga Phi. And while he's an Australian, he lived in New York, and legendary work his agency has done. And what we're going to see is what Droga did in New York, a campaign or an effort that some of you may have heard of. So let's see that film. I'm going to share the screen. And tell me if you can all see this.
Yeah, it's visible.
The lack of clean and accessible water is the second largest killer of children around the world. We're talking 5-6 million children a year.
I think 6,000 children a day worldwide die from not having clean, safe drinking water.
$1 would buy you 40 liters of water. A child needs between 1 and 2 liters a day to survive, so either 40 children will live one more day from that dollar, or one child will live 40 more days from that dollar.
Eyewitness News. This is Today. E-News, CNN Headline News.
This is ABC 13.
My 9 News, New York 1. It's Thursday, March 22nd.
Today is World Water Day.
And UNICEF is asking New Yorkers to remember those around the world without clean water.
More than 1 billion people worldwide don't have access to clean water.
Sarah Jessica Barker was in NYC to support the UNICEF TAP project.
UNICEF's TAP project is at nearly 300 restaurants in New York City.
$1 for tap water starting tomorrow.
The money will go to UNICEF programs which provide safe drinking water for children around the world.
Sorry, how do I get out of that? Oh, okay. Okay, so that was David Roga's tap water, and every year after it started, it has spread to many more countries. Today, it's active in something like 65 countries, trying to raise money for water, the tap water project. It's equally impactfully a small advertising agency in Sydney in 2007 thought of an idea, a powerful idea again, to try and contribute to climate change. And they came up with this idea of Earth Hour. 60 minutes, they said, let's shut off lights. And in that first year, 2 million people in Sydney participated in Earth Hour. Today, it's in 138 countries. So we see how some of these have the power to grow, and the root cause of all this is a impactful, strong, creative idea. I'm next going to look at what Volvo did in the UK. All of us are familiar with Volvo. It's an automotive company whose existence is on the promise of safety, and all of us know that. And we would expect that to make the roads safe, this company would have done and tried to do a few more additions on their product to try and make their vehicles safer. But let's see what they did in the UK.
Nearly every day something almost happens. You've kind of got to be able to second guess the taxi in front of you or the pedestrians coming up.
I end up getting nearly hit at least once a day.
The young driver lost concentration and hit me from behind. I was extremely lucky that day. The doctor said that 95% of people that would have sustained those injuries would have been killed by them.
We're on roads that were built really 100 years ago for far less traffic.
In terms of cycling at night, I feel way less visible. Sometimes I choose not to cycle home at night. It's a lot more dangerous.
Life Paint is a unique spray different to other reflective products on the market. When you apply it to the surface, the reflective particles will stick together with a special adhesive, making the spray invisible by day, but light up at night in the glare of headlights.
Volvo is renowned for its safety innovations. Life Paint takes the principle of our 2020 vision, protecting passengers inside the car to protect those outside too.
I think you've just got to be as visible as you can, and that's the good thing about Life Paint, is it makes it very hard for you to be missed.
Putting something on that will make you scream out to drivers like me is a fantastic thing.
I think cycle safety in London is not all about bicycles, it's about cars, it's about pedestrians, it's about sharing the road with other users. So it's great that a car brand has got involved to essentially help cyclists and help drivers in the end save lives.
Okay, which brings me to the last illustration.
Prasad, can we stop for a minute and ask you, did Volvo then distribute this free, or what is it?
No, they sold it at a highly subsidized rate.
And it didn't carry on. I don't see it on the shelves now. No?
It was in UK for at least, this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And in many other European countries which had a high incidence of cycling, like Amsterdam and places like that, it became extremely popular. It really works in cities which have a huge cycling space and narrow, and London doesn't have the big wide roads that parts of US have. And therefore it was seen appropriate as something that could be done. In fact, Volvo has continuously done work beyond their product. I mean, I don't have the time, but I would have shown you what they did in Hong Kong, was to try and make sure that people who are driving cars don't use mobile. And they did it very innovatively. They had all these people go into a cinema theater in Hong Kong, and they had set up separately a method by which a third-party guy could send an SMS to everybody in the hall at the same time through a console. So on the screen, they showed an ad where a guy was listening to music and driving fast. At that particular moment, this SMS was sent to everybody in the hall. And all those 70 people inside the theater hall took out their mobiles and wanted to see what the message was. And at that time, the car crashed on screen. And there was a message saying, using the mobile while driving can be fatal. So it was an actual live experience, 70 people sitting inside the theater hall. So, and that was again a Volvo effort in a cinema theater in Hong Kong. So companies which seem to be committed to wanting to do some good, sort of raise the bar, ask their creative guys to go beyond the ordinary, do something more than just sell my product.
Yeah.
So on a practical,
the background was Swedish, but now with the Chinese having taken over in the past 4 years.
Yeah, I know.
On a practical note, it's very good that they are doing this as reflective surfaces for night, because in England by 3 o'clock in winter time it's dark.
Correct, you're right. Okay, doing social good need not just be about saving the earth or providing water or sort of saving lives of accident. Here is a softer cause, but a very charming one, and I just love this case. Suresh Narayan may like it because it comes from Nestle.
Let's hear it.
Oh, sorry. I got so excited. This is one of my favorites.
Ciao. Stai studiando?
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Vero? Stop.
Sì, let's go.
What is it supposed to be?
In fact, the case of Nestle, I also teach a case study on Nestle in Italy, and it's a fantastic situation. Nestle has 90% of the instant coffee market in Italy, but 3% of the total coffee market, because nobody in Italy drinks instant coffee. And therefore, they have to do many such things like this to sort of appeal to the younger, emerging Italians for whom coffee making is not such a ritual. And it is such charming initiatives like this which sort of endear them to the consumer there. And
It's very cute.
And I thought it was as social a cause as trying to save electricity or provide water, all of which are great causes. I'm just going to end with one anecdote on which I don't have creative work, which is an anti-obesity effort. All of us in modern societies are fighting obesity as a problem. And many organizations are interested in promoting anti-obesity initiatives. Too often, it tends to preach down to say, don't eat fast food, don't eat at McDonald's, don't eat this, don't eat that. And a creative guy in an Australian town came up with an idea of harnessing social media and let people co-create this movement. So what he did was to divide the city into 12 districts and made the city pledge a certain weight loss in kilos for the year. So that city pledged saying that we will lose X number of kilos in the year, and then asked all its constituents to sign into the program and make an individual pledge. So somebody who was X kilos said, I will lose 3 kilos in the next 6 months or 1 year. Somebody said, I'll lose 8. Somebody said, I'll do 10. And they all put in as their pledges. Each district fought with the other as a competition, comparing notes as to where they have achieved. People started using the Facebook app that they developed to compare what exercise regimes they were following. Some people wrote about the new diets that they had created. So suddenly this idea bloomed without somebody thrusting it down your throat. And people found that it was an engaging, very delightful thing to do. I opened a WhatsApp message just to see how 3 of my competing districts have done in weight loss so far. And it seemed a nice thing to do. And I was learning new things to cook, new ways to diet. And eventually it became a movement that was actually not created by the organizers or the creative guy. He just lit a particular fire, and it was actually a people's movement. So I think that is really the point I wanted to make, that do a lot of social good if you energize the community which has to actually benefit by it and make them co-creators. But it needs that strong single idea, which is what most creative people begin with, whether I'm writing a poem or I'm writing a book, or whether as a creative advertising man, I have to do all that a writer does in 30 seconds or in 2 minutes. And that's a challenge, but it all starts with what we call the big creative idea. And you must have conviction that you can change the world with that creative idea. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prasad. Yeah,
you know,
very
Prasad,
nice.
it always reminds me very shortly. I'm sorry, I know we are all overshooting our time, but very shortly, 1987, there's a very powerful set of advertisement that Bosch at that time, Myco, brought out. I just called Bring Back Clean Air.
Bring Back Clean Air.
1987, it showed, is it 1997, question mark, full haze, a person wearing a mask, and all set of 12 advertisements, all are in all the larger towns it was run. And it had a lot of impact. Some people started condemning it. They said, why are you scaring everybody? India is not going to become like that. We'll have more.
In today's age of social media, it would have done even better, because people would have taken over the movement and run it for you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
About the water project, actually, I first heard about it. My nephew lives in Manhattan in New York. So he, for his birthday a couple of years back, I think, and this is what he had asked. He had put it up on Instagram and on Facebook, that for his wishes, this is his charity to which he has to donate. But they were actually providing potable water for villages in Africa. Same thing, children dying without water.
Absolutely.
And so raising money for that. That's the first water shortage, but you didn't face up to the fact that children are actually dying in Africa for lack of.
And it's a brilliant effort, because it cost UNICEF nothing. They used the entire value of the internet and newspapers and television. So without costing a single dollar, they continue to raise many, many millions of dollars to help children get water. And all due to that one brand that David Doga created, saying Project Tap. So tap water will get branded, and that's free. Nobody owns it. Let people pay $1. So people ate, and then just added $1 to the bill.
It's so interesting that about 15 years ago, my son-in-law Arunabha took Jay-Z to Africa to sensitize the Hollywood about the situation of water.
Right.
A lot of impact at the time in Hollywood.
Yep. Great.
Our cities probably need this really, urgently. The way, if you go into the city, the way these people waste Kaveri water is like astounding. People will be just washing cars and, just spraying water in front of their houses. It's like water will be there forever. Nobody really appreciates it when you get it easily.
Prasad, just a small word on this social good and mass movement. I'm going to circulate a small film sometime tomorrow, day after, of the Kaveri Calling project of Sadhguru.
Okay.
It's actually a people's movement.
That's
already some 17 million people have signed and have donated. It's not only a project that involves the two states of India, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, but now getting to be known all over the world. And several organizations, including the UN, have approved the project and acknowledged that project as probably the solution for the world. This kind of tree plantation along the river basins of Kaveri. It's a beautiful movie, and I'll circulate. It is a little bit long. It's about 12-15 minutes or so.
Okay.
I'll circulate it tomorrow. It's a big example of a social good through mass movement of people.
Yes, and some of these have such virality. I mean, look at where Earth Hour has gone. It started in one city in Australia. Today,
That's
138 countries, and the amount of carbon credits that you can account out of that 1 hour of switching off electricity. So,
that's
truly,
right.
a strong creative idea can spread bigger than coronavirus.
So we have to compliment BESCOM. Huh? Every now and then they'll switch off our power. Anyway, okay. So let's move on to our next speaker. Suresh has this story to share with us that he's written. So Suresh, over to you.
Okay, good evening. And just to add my 2 bits to what Prasad said, I think it's a very, very interesting presentation, Prasad, by you. I think one thing on water, I mean, sometimes apart from the public, also corporates can do a lot on water conservation. So I'm very proud of the fact that that Nestle in India, we have a patented technology where we actually use the water in the milk in extraction and use it for the CIP of our plant. Okay. So we have reduced the groundwater extraction by almost 20% in Punjab, in our factory in Moga, and also a factory in Haryana, Samalkha, as a result of that. So I think that is what technology can do, and considerably reduced our water utilization by almost 60% in the last 5 years as a result of that. So I know the community part of it, but there's also what corporates can do. And interestingly, the weight loss in a community that you looked at when I was in Singapore heading the company and later on in Egypt, we actually had something called an office challenge. Okay. So we had, for one of our brands of breakfast cereals called Fitness, we had an office challenge. So there would be challenges amongst offices to decide how many kilos of weight they would knock off.
You can share. Great.
So, and using that, then you would get an award at the end of it, or some kind of holiday package or something. So that worked extremely well. Of course, in Singapore, it was less of a problem because people don't have much weight to lose. But in Egypt, they could lose as much as the weight of the pyramids. So therefore, the results were more dramatic in Egypt than they were in Singapore, because that it was more in grams and milligrams. Okay, so coming to mind, very different vein, and this is actually based on this story I wrote a couple of weeks back is based on a true story. So something that I've been through. And it happened, of course, many years ago. So let me read out the story to you. It's called the Banshee of Sherichu. Sherichu, Sherichu, is the name of a river in Bhutan, where I had the privilege of spending some years of my childhood with my parents. So it's really something that's drawn out of that. It almost seems like this incident happened just yesterday, even though the tale I tell you is of the early 70s. Sometime during my boyhood days, we will leave my precise age unknown to preserve the mystery of the narrative and the youth of the author. I had the unique good fortune to study at Rishi Valley School, which was like a heaven on earth with 300 acres of lush green valley, surrounded by hills with our own rivers and streams and forests, a home away from home to just 350 kids. Despite these idyllic surroundings, a bustle of excitement surrounded our coveted 2-month summer vacation and a chance for a respite from school. At the crack of dawn, we were huddled into buses, armed with small trunks. Remember the black iron variety, since Samsonite was not around. A veritable gaggle of excited kids, managed by 2 sober teachers per bus. I headed out to Calcutta by train and on to Guwahati. It was not Guwahati then. I would wait excitedly for the plane to land to see my parents, a strapping young border roads engineer in his uniform, and my gregarious and emotional mother, who would be just waiting to embrace her only born. Matter of reference, my late mother is my uncle Lakshmi Narayan's eldest sister. And then my favorite ride in my dad's Jonga, Nissan Petrol as it was then, to the land of the Dragon King, a beautiful haven, then as now, Bhutan. The air somehow changed as we drove past Daranga, the last point on the Indian border, and entered the misty mountain kingdom at Samdrup Jonkar, a border town at the foothills. My father, as I told you before, was a civil engineer with the border roads organization, which was called Project Dantak in Bhutan. As the head of a large construction crew and team of engineers, he had a reputation as a very hard taskmaster, with a quick temper and an elephantine memory for every culvert, alignment, and bridge that he had ever constructed. And there are hundreds across the Himalayas which he was involved in. One problem that seemed intractable to this engineer was to build and retain a bridge over a small river called Sheri, hence Sherichu. Chu means river in Dzongkha, the local language of the Bhutanese. Every time a bridge was built, it would get washed out by a sudden flood or cracks would appear, making it dangerous. I used to join my dad on his post-mortem visits, in which both the engineering disaster and the junior engineer would receive an earful from my father, his slide rule, because those days it was only slide rule, his slide rule and sheaf of papers threatening perilously to fly out of his hands. Nothing seemed to control the tide of disasters, all unexplained, sudden, almost mysterious. Just as the precise evidence of engineering began to fail, the whimsical hypothesis of the local intelligence network started to provide answers. One of the village elders mentioned in hushed tones one day the reason why he thought the bridge never stood. A young woman, scorned by her husband and abandoned, had committed suicide at the place where the bridge stood on the banks of the Sherichu. This was many decades ago, but village folklore carried that tale to be told. My father was a very pragmatic man and pooh-poohed the veracity of this logic. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned might be a good adage, but it had no place, absolutely no place, in his orderly world measured only by slide rules and surveying instruments. Nevertheless, the story and the cause became a persistent voice, and my dad decided to meet the Rinpoche of Yanfula. Rinpoche is the head priest of the monastery of a place called Yanfula. The Rinpoche, a kindly old gentleman, offered benign support that a prayer could be held on the site, and he would send 2 monks from the Buddhist school for this. A suitable date was set, and about 100 people gathered under a tarpaulin erected at the bank of the Sherichu. The 2 young monks arrived, and I was glad to witness this first for me. Om Mani Padme Hum began, and then the beautiful intonations of the chants and the rhythmic gyrations of the prayer wheel in their hands. Suddenly, the senior priest stopped and wanted to speak to my father through a translator. There is a very angry spirit here, sir, he said in hushed tones. The spirit is a woman who is extremely angry with the way her husband abandoned her, and now you have got her livid as you want to disturb her on the banks. He went on with an anxious look. She demands a sacrifice, not of a cow or a goat or anything material, but she will decide what she will have. The monks added that they would continue the prayers till the end, but were now very fearful of the consequences. My father has a unique ability of being unruffled with bad news and calmly internalized the statements. He relayed back to the monks to carry on the prayers, and we will watch and see what happens. The prayers went on. The chants became more sonorous, and a sudden gust of cold air went past the tent, almost as if making an entry or departure of sorts. It was a beautiful sunny day, and while everyone knew why the prayers were being held, they remained positive of the outcome. The Sherichu Bridge should stay. Some days passed, and just about the time when the memory of the prayers started to recede, came the first bad news. The young monk had suddenly, quite inexplicably, slipped and fallen into a mountain crevice, and his body was found with its neck broken. No reasons, no logic, and no clear explanation as to how one could literally get thrown down a crevice. Had the Banshee of Sherichu spoken? A few weeks later came even more intriguing news. The senior monk who had led the prayers and who was a very young man died suddenly while praying in the monastery in Yonfula. A hale and hearty monk with no illnesses, no complaints, suddenly drops dead while in prayer. Did the Banshee of Sherichu have the last word? And yes, the Sherichu Bridge, I am told, still stands and is a vital link in eastern Bhutan. The mountains have secrets. There are mysterious ways. We rational, city-bred folk will never understand which spirit seeks revenge and which is benign. We expunge such thoughts from our psyche. But for me, the Banshee of Sherichu has been imprinted in my memory almost 5 decades after she gave her shrieking. Thank you.
Very nice, very nice. Do you get a chance to go to Bhutan often?
No, I went there actually. Rajit and I, we went about 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago. I visited Thimphu. I mean, it's an absolutely fabulous country. My father was posted there for 3 years, and in fact, my parents attended the coronation of the current king's father, Jigme Singh Wangchuk. So they were both there. They were invited. So my mom and my dad both attended that coronation. Really, absolutely fabulous country. Really beautiful, still unspoiled.
Correct.
Very nice people. And no, it's. But you know, in the mountains, you keep hearing a lot of these stories, and we don't know. We can't understand it. We dismiss it, but the people believe it, and then they see it happening.
We were also there a couple of years ago. They have this
happiest country, huh?
They have this happiness index.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a measure.
Yes.
I think probably that is the only country in the world which has such an index.
No, in the old days, Mr. Muthuraman, when the current king's grandfather, Jigme Dorji Wangchuk, was alive, he used to visit eastern Bhutan, and the only habitable house used to be where my parents stayed. So they had to clear up the house and move into a guest house because the king and his entourage would stay there. But they knew that we were proper Tamil Brahmins, and my mother wouldn't allow any of this pork and stuff to enter the kitchen. So they used to scrub the kitchen and the house clean before they came, and one scrub after they went. And the chief used to come and tell my mother ki, sab kuch kar diya madam, sab kuch theek hai. So then because my mother would be very particular. Panyu, Midu, Sapte, she would have a lot of worries on those things.
So
very well done, sir. Very nice.
Raji, Rani and I were there last year, and there were some fascinating aspects of Bhutan. As you said, it's a very charming country. But even in the cities, which have a fair amount of traffic, the unique fact about Bhutan is that there are no traffic cops.
No.
Not a single traffic signal is manned by a cop. There is so much of self-regulation in that community.
Yeah.
So there's no happiness index, the way of life, everything sits. So we went.
Prasad, they are very content, very happy people, very peaceful people.
Yeah, we went to another place where they said this is the district court. So we walked down and then went up, and it all looked very deserted. So I turned around and asked that guide, like in India, we have the courts go for summer vacation for 2 months and nobody's there. I said, is this vacation time for the courts? He said, no, it's regular time. I said, why is it so deserted? He said, we have no cases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing, that country. You can write volumes about that country.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Beautifully brought out. So do you think those priests died as sacrifice? And then the bridge is now fine?
One never knows, because I remember one of these things also happened when my father was building a road in beyond Joshimath. There was again a bridge that he had constructed. And I remember as a boy, my mother and I used to stay in Dehradun, and we used to drive up during the summer vacations. And I remember at 2 o'clock in the morning, he had to go to the site. And, my father will get very frenetic at these times to go and exactly see what the hell was happening. And, there again, somebody said that, look, there was a spirit there, and that boulder was falling every time because that spirit had to be appeased. Of course, there a puja was done. And interestingly, when we had the Alaknanda floods some decades ago, close to where my parents stayed, there used to be a Parvati temple. And everything in the vicinity was wiped out of that place during the Alaknanda floods. The only element that survived was that Parvati temple. And the temple and the precincts completely was as if it was untouched. How do you explain it? How do you explain it? I mean,
10, 15 years, no?
Yeah?
It is about 10 or 15 years back, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Suresh, this Parvati temple that you mentioned reminds me of something. It is absolutely amazing, and it has happened in front of my eyes. The Taj Hotel in Bombay that was attacked some years ago. There are several militants inside the hotel, and several shots were fired. And if you remember the hotel, in the old wing, as you go upstairs, there is a statue of Jamshedji Tata. There is not one bullet on that statue.
Yeah, amazing.
Not one bullet. The hotel had to be renovated completely, and we found that there is not one bullet on the body of that statue.
Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, nobody could believe why it happened like that.
Yeah.
We had stayed in the Taj, Shubhu and I, and there is a heritage tour that take you on, right? And this was after the attack. So that also was a part of the tour. They explained what all was damaged and what happened. And they took us and they showed us this. Also, they said that one of the things that they wanted to do was, so the figure is actually above that is the atrium and that huge dome.
Correct.
So one of the wanted to do was bring the dome down. So from outside, they could see that the dome has caved in. And they tried their level best, whatever they tried, but the dome never fell. The dome was still standing at the end of the attack.
Some of these can't be explained.
Yeah, no, it is.
Okay, I think we'll move on to our last speaker. Hema, you've got your poem all set.
Am I muted?
Yeah, unmuted. So, there are so many poems out there and you can read it forever and more. It's not so much as a poem, as I was telling Shibu, there's a translation, because we saw how such a beautiful poem of Jaya's was like massacred by some English literature person. I'm not saying that mine is a perfect translation, but it's something like translation versus transliteration. You have to understand what the poet was trying to tell you. Sometimes you might not get the words the same, but it has to at least bring out the soul of the poem. So this one was like, you know how these WhatsApp forwards come, you know, so many of them. This was a WhatsApp forward that came in our medical college group in Hindi. And as you can understand, I did my medicine in Kottayam. You know, 90% of the people speak Malayalam. The very few of them actually understand or speak any Hindi. And this beautiful Gulzar's poem in chaste Devanagari came around on the WhatsApp group. And everybody like, what the hell is this? You know, somebody sit and translate. And then one of them said, Hema or Anwar, you all have met Anwar, so you know who I'm talking about. Translate this. So Anwar was like, I don't know, he was busy or God knows in his own world. I sat down and translated it. Initially, in fact, I remember as I sat down and I wrote it down on my notes page and I shot it off in like a couple of hours. But as with most poems, it evolves over time. After some, and then I landed up on my computer and then I would play with it once in a while, change a word here and there. So it is always a work in progress. Now, a disclaimer here, it is very difficult to translate from vernacular, Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam into English. You cannot bring out the beauty of the poem. And, you know, those poems are so beautiful. So this is a very, this is a sketchy attempt, but you know, I mean, you'll enjoy the poem nevertheless. So first I'll read the Hindi, Gulzar's. I don't know what it is titled. Like I said, it came around on WhatsApp. Starts off with, "ऐ उम्र, कुछ कहा मैंने, पर शायद तूने सुना नहीं. तू छीन सकती है बचपन मेरा, पर बचपना नहीं. हर बात का कोई जवाब नहीं होता, हर इश्क का नाम खराब नहीं होता. यूं तो झूम लेते हैं नशे में पीने वाले, मगर हर नशे का नाम शराब नहीं होता. खामोश चेहरे पर हजारों पहरे होते हैं, हंसती आंखों में भी जख्म गहरे होते हैं. जिनसे अक्सर रूठ जाते हैं हम, असल में उनसे ही रिश्ते गहरे होते हैं. किसी ने खुदा से दुआ मांगी, दुआ में अपनी मौत मांगी. खुदा ने कहा, मौत तो तुझे दे दूं, मगर उससे क्या कह दूं जिसने तेरी जिंदगी दुआ में मांगी. हर इंसान बुरा नहीं होता, हर इंसान का दिल बुरा नहीं होता, हर एक इंसान बुरा नहीं होता. बुझ जाते हैं दिए कभी तेल की कमी से, हर एक बार कसूर हवा का नहीं होता. So that is the original. Now,
beautiful.
Yeah. So look at the first, I mean, those of you know Hindi will understand. How do you translate something like "ऐ उम्र"? What do you say? "ऐ उम्र"? "ऐ lifetime", "hey life", "hey time", you know. So obviously I've not done very well with that sentence. Another thing that when I think of "ऐ उम्र" is the Tamil song "Uire". You know, in Dil Se, "Uire", you all know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it came in Hindi, do you remember what it says in Hindi?
Aaja re.
No, "Tu hi re".
Tu hi re.
I mean, "Uire" and "Tu hi re", there is no comparison. So that's what I'm saying. So
they wanted the rhyming thing.
Yeah, I know, but you know, it just loses it completely. So this is my translation. What I said to this life was perhaps lost in the cacophony of our times. You may snatch away my childhood, but not this playful heart that is mine. Every question need not have answers. Every love expressed cannot be scandalous. He dances with abandon, flying high on life. All of life's intoxication is not always in mind. The visage is silent and guarded. Smiling eyes can also hide hurt and sadness. We are doomed to hurt deepest those we love dearest. If I were to pray to my Lord for my death to come speedily to me, what would he say to those who pray for my life, my longevity? People are not all bad. All souls are not beyond redeemed. The lamp not nurtured by oil will die. We cannot always blame the wayward wind for that. So that is it.
Nice.
Very nicely
Very well
translated.
done.
Nice. You almost got it.
Wonderful job. Yeah, I mean, I love the thing about the line where he talks about what will I tell the person who asked for your life. So Hindi mein bhi bahut sundar tha.
Bahut sundar.
It worked beautifully in your English version.
Yeah, thanks. So the other, one of my inspirations when I tried to translate this is the Malayalam poet Sachidanandan. Sachidanandan is actually an English literature major. So he translates his own Malayalam poetry. So if you get a chance, maybe if I can search it out and put it up, there is a poem called How to Enter the Tao Temple. And as I read this How to Enter the Tao Temple in English, I knew I had to read the Malayalam version. Now, I'm not very proficient in reading Malayalam script, so I'm ashamed to say that. But I can manage. I sat and I took a lot of time, but I read the Malayalam version. And the English version is beautiful, beautiful, because Sachidanand himself has translated it. But the Malayalam version is like, what can you say? It's a beautiful poem. You should, read it sometime.
Very good.
So nice.
So Jaya, send your poem over. Let me start working on it.
Okay, will do. Actually, as a poet, sometimes I really feel that when my language becomes difficult, the poem finds very few takers. Like, it's not really approachable by everyone, and that's the biggest hurdle. Once, the whole effort is to tone down the difficulty in language, make it as accessible as possible to people. Last time when I recited my poems, I realized there were some simpler ones which I could have done. I don't know why they didn't come to my mind. But yeah, translation is totally another ball game. It's very difficult.
The other person
Another
is
thing,
Kamala Das, actually. Kamala Das's poem, like when you were talking about simplicity, I realized. Very simple words, such simple words she uses.
Yeah. So, and plus, there are a couple of things when doing translation. One, the other person has to be a poet, and he has to be a poet of similar kind to do the translation, like similar style, or so that's when the essence of poem is not lost while. So, yeah, I have utterly failed in doing translations. मैं कभी attempt भी नहीं करूँगी. It was nice, really nice.
You want to read that how to go to a Tao temple? We have a few minutes left if you want to.
I was actually going to put it up on the group.
Okay. All right.
Or we can recite it some other time. It's a beautiful
it's quite a long poem. Yeah.
It's quite a long poem.
Okay, guys. Any other comments? Sujaya, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that it was a lovely evening. Enjoyed what all three speakers had to present. Really a beautiful evening.
Really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Nice story, Suresh.
Yeah, really nice story.
I was reminded of a similar story in Sultan Batteri once. My mother hails from Wayanad. So it's after a long time, some 20-25 years, that we all decided as a family to go to Wayanad. We had to go via Sultan Batteri. As a kid, I was shown some trees which were chained. And I believe the belief there's a spirit which has been chained, to the trees there. So I was very intrigued because people stopped there, and then there were a lot of visitors who were shown those big chains around the trees. And on water conservation, I read an article which says the amount of potable water that is wasted in corporate conferences. People are given these bottles.
Nowadays,
each of us.
Nowadays they give in glasses.
Yeah,
they change it.
Given glasses because we sip from the bottles and leave the bottles there, now which are half filled.
In fact, we mounted an effort in Delhi. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy killed it. We got hold of Sheila Dikshit to listen to a campaign we developed where we talked to all the restaurants and sold the virtue of half a glass of water. Saying half a glass, don't take a full glass because you will invariably at a restaurant leave it there and it will get thrown away. And all the restaurants signed up for it where they said when guests come in, we'll only fill half the glass of water. A full-fledged digital campaign and some corporate sponsors were pulled in. Sheila Dikshit met us in spite of a very busy schedule. She was extremely moved by saying Delhi Bhagidari effort, this can make a huge statement, and promptly assigned 2 bureaucrats to work with us to see it to fruition.
And they killed it.
That evening it died.
They killed it.
The bureaucrats decided to talk to the chief minister, but we don't have to do anything with it.
Hey, Prasad, you remember we went to Wayanad? I didn't know it was Sultan Batteri. I thought it was called Sultan Battery.
Yeah, I called it Sultan Battery.
Everybody does that.
So officially it's Sultan Battery.
You didn't know? Sultan Batteri, yeah. Batteri
no, but you know, it's battery is also all of that, the guns, no? The gunnery.
That is the
gunnery is also originally
so
Batteri is like a Malayalam modification of the battery of guns.
It is Sultan Battery.
Yeah.
We have a factory close by.
The culprit are the Malayalis.
Okay.
Yeah, culprit are Malayalis. But when you come inside the state lines, you have to say Batteri, not Bharat.
You can say whatever you want virtually from Gurgaon, but once you are there, I guess you need to pronounce it as Batteri.
But what about this thing about Gurgaon? It's now Gurugram, right? Making it fancy.
Gurugram.
Gurgaon wasn't, polished enough for them, is it?
No,
Just
actually,
like
It was too polished. It was too polished for.
Gurgaon is like a. It's that area was where Dronacharya taught all his students.
Guru ka gram hai. That is the origin of the word.
So they wanted to kind of, project that image again after so many, eons of years. So,
but has it worked?
With the state of infrastructure, we have become a gram now. So we are living our dream. We wanted it to be Guru Gram. We are now a gram.
Yeah, Suresh, you come to Arbors.
Geeta will not agree. Geeta will not want them to come to Arbors. She will have to move out.
By the way, let's do a movie review. So we can so all of us can watch some movie and then we could discuss it.
No, Prasad can do it right away.
I am offering.
Okay, you suggest one movie for all of us, and then next time we can all.
I'll put it on the group.
Yeah, put it on the group, and you can start reviewing it briefly, and then we can discuss it. What we each of us likes best in the movie and things like that.
The biggest.
But actually, Prasad was thinking of hero number 1. Prasad, right?
No. It'll have to be a little more serious than that.
My husband.
Is it a Govinda
Okay, guys.
I'm actually a little concerned because one of our Ravi has not spoken a single word. So I'm wondering if he's unwell or should I come over there and get you your insulin shot or what's the deal?
Hema is the 12th man. He'll always play at the right time.
Ravi.
Ravi.
Oh, we lost you. We lost the audio for a minute.
There you go. That's the problem. Their network is poor.
What did you say, Hema?
I said that I'm concerned that you have not said a single word up until now. So I was wondering whether I should come there with a glucose bottle or insulin shot or what the hell is it that you need that you're so quiet, which is unusual.
They are frozen now. Their internet is.
It is network. I think it's network.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Lovely evening.